T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Yeah, take this shit serious.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Yeah, take this shit serious.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. On this episode, I'm going to be giving you guys my Monday Night Football reaction to the Seahawks trampling the New York Giants. We're going to be discussing the Steelers and Falcons quarterback problems, the New York Giants. You know, they really surprised me with how bad they've been this season. And I wasn't expecting this team to make it to the postseason, but I at least thought they would be a little bit better than what they've been so far. Now, on the other end, you know, you got the Steelers and Falcons with quarterback problems. You got the Giants who may have a quarterback issue. But the Detroit Lions have an issue with not finding ways to get their first-round running back on the field in Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think they need to let him out the cage. It's like they got Jahmyr Gibbs behind bars and he's incarcerated. I don't understand why Jahmyr Gibbs can't get more opportunities in this offense for Detroit. And I got a lot of things to say about that. And the Chicago Bears, you know, they got embarrassed by the Denver Broncos this past weekend, in my opinion. It's like they were up by 3 touchdowns, man. And some way, somehow, they allowed Russell Wilson and the Broncos to win the game. And it may be time for them just to blow it all up. All right. And then I have some college football takes, SEC thoughts, Oklahoma versus Texas preview and prediction. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Sundays through Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and after Sunday and Monday Night Football. Check out the JT Sports Podcast. We're not just the YouTube channel. Every episode of the podcast is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We're trying to reach 100 5-star reviews before the end of this month. So if you enjoy, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. All right. The Seattle Seahawks squashed the New York Giants on Monday Night Football 24-3. The Giants are not a good football team. Just to keep it blunt, I think this is a mid-football team. And I was telling people this all off season. And with the Seahawks beating the Giants the way they did tonight, they pretty much confirmed what I've been telling New York Giants fans all throughout the offseason leading up into this season. And that was that your team wasn't really that great. The acquisitions that you made in free agency, Paris Campbell, you traded for Darren Waller, they were mid-acquisitions. Darren Waller, he's a solid player when he's healthy and you're able to get him involved in the passing game. But Paris Campbell, what has he done this season? Not really much. You know, the best addition that the New York Giants made was drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, their starting center, who left this game due to injury. And their offensive line was severely beat up. But this offensive line has been bad for pretty much half a decade. The last time I recall the Giants having a remotely solid offensive line was like 5 years ago. This offensive line, yes, they were beat up in this game, but so was Seattle. The Giants' offensive line, you have concerns with Evan Neal, who looks like a bust. Andrew Thomas, he didn't play in this game. Their starting left tackle, he's their best offensive lineman. Outside of him, everybody else and John Michael Smith, they're not really that good. Daniel Jones, I know if you look at the box score, it shows you that he didn't have a great game. But I don't think Daniel Jones is as bad as what the statistics show. Daniel Jones, when he has a serviceable offensive line, he can do some damage throwing the football. And he throws a really nice deep ball. And what really allowed the New York Giants to have a little bit of an offense in this game was Daniel Jones' legs. Daniel Jones, I know you look at him and you look at how much he's getting paid and you say he sucks, and I agree with that. But I don't think he's the whole entire reason for why the New York Giants are 1-3 right now. This team is just mid, and they're going up against great teams. They got smacked by the Cowboys. You know, they got smacked tonight against the Seattle Seahawks. When they're going up against some of the best teams in the league, it's a mismatch. And Giants fans were screaming all off season, oh, we got so better. Compared to everybody else in the division, you didn't really get that better. The Commanders got better. Philadelphia still is kind of the same team. The Dallas Cowboys got better when they traded for Stephon Gilmore and brought in Brandon Cooks. And even though Stephon Gilmore, he's healthy, but Trayvon Diggs is injured, they still have a way better roster than you. The New York Giants, with how difficult their schedule is, they're not going to make it to the postseason. And they probably won't have a winning record this year. And I think that a lot of people were too quick to anoint Brian Daboll as this next great coach in the league. Matt Nagy had a fantastic year one with the Chicago Bears. And after that, it seemed like the Bears got worse every single season he was the head coach. Brian Daboll, I'm not saying he's the next Matt Nagy because he still has some really good play calling, but I think the Giants really need to go out and try to get some big names on this team. They're lacking star power. Outside of Saquon Barkley, who else is a star in this offense? When you look at the other teams in this division, the Washington Commanders got Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. They got a really good group of wide receivers. They got some really good running backs. And they got a lot of talent on defense. The Philadelphia Eagles have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Cowboys, Brandon Cooks, C.D. Lamb, Tony Pollard. You know, they got superstars. They got elite players at their positions. And the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys both have two of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You see, when I look at the Seattle Seahawks, I see a team that is one of the deepest in the NFL. You know, Jamal Adams played his first NFL game in like over 300 days, and it only took him 9 plays to get injured again. And it didn't really matter because they got a lot of depth at that position. The Seattle Seahawks' young talent tonight really flashed, and this is a large reason why I have the Seattle Seahawks making it to the Super Bowl this year. They have way more depth than any other team in the NFC at every single position. Their offensive line was just as beat up as the New York Giants. So if you're a Giants fan trying to make up excuses, there are none. Seattle was down multiple starters just as much as you were. And they were down their starting left tackle too, who's out for the season. But it didn't matter. The Seattle Seahawks, what have they done? They drafted well. They've made some really good acquisitions. You know, you had the Woes, who was getting pressure on Daniel Jones. You also had Draymond Jones, who was a big free agency signing for Seattle, who a lot of people really didn't even pay attention to. The Seattle Seahawks have one of the best young rosters in the NFL. Yeah, you got Bobby Wagner, who's leading your team in tackles, and he's getting up there in age, but the dude isn't slowing down. He's still one of the best linebackers in the league. You got Devon Witherspoon, who had 2 interceptions. Did he have 2 interceptions? I don't know if he had 2 interceptions, but he did have a pick 6. He had 2 sacks, though. Devon Witherspoon was all over the place in this game. He had a pick 6. He had several sacks. He made a lot of big hits for Seattle. And y'all know I love me some Devon Witherspoon. And the way they're using him, they just got this dude just playing football out there. It's a lot of fun watching Devon Witherspoon play. You want to know why? Because there's not a lot of defensive backs, especially cornerbacks, coming into the league that like to tackle. Devon Witherspoon, he gonna put the hit stick on you. He has no problem running down, coming downhill, and laying down a big hit on a running back. Now, he probably is going to get injured hella often. You know, maybe not early in his career, but maybe later on. He kind of has dealt with a couple of injury issues, you know, throughout training camp and even back at Illinois. But Devon Witherspoon, when he's healthy, this dude is a stud. And I love watching this man play. He was my favorite player coming out of this past year's draft behind Jalen Carter and Bryce Young. The Seattle Seahawks have so much young talent on defense that a lot of people really don't know about. You know about Tyreek Woolen and Devon Witherspoon, but that's about it. Jordan Brooks has been playing some of the best football of his career. Uchenna Nwosu, he's been really big for them. Darrell Taylor, Boye Mafe. You didn't really get to see him much because he's more of a rotational guy. But I'm glad that the Seahawks got a chance to play on national television in front of a national audience, because I want you guys to really look at Seattle's roster top to bottom and look at all of the young pieces that they have. And even if they don't make it to the Super Bowl this year, they should at least be in the Super Bowl picture within the next 2-3 years when all that young talent starts to really develop and get into their prime years. And plus, Seattle hasn't missed in the draft. Their last 2 drafts have been outstanding. Everybody is producing. Kenneth Walker. Did you see Zach Charbonnet? Zach Charbonnet was going off in this game. And he was a 2nd-round pick just like Kenneth Walker. JSN, you know, it's taken him a while to get into the swing of things, but I can kind of understand why he's not getting a lot of action, because you got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf lining up outside of him. And we forget about Noah Fant, who had like a big 50-something yard reception. Geno Smith, when he got injured, I was a little concerned. But I trust that even if he wasn't able to play, they still would be in good hands with Drew Lock. This is a really good roster with a lot of depth. They may be young. They may not have the top-end talent that the Cowboys and the 49ers do. But by the time we get to the playoffs, the Seattle Seahawks are going to be better suited for a deep playoff run compared to other teams because they just have so much depth. Football is about being able to make it through the season and being able to have guys who can produce, because everybody's going to get injured eventually. Not every star player in your team's going to stay healthy. And even then, some of them may be a little banged up when they got to miss a few games here and there. Come playoff time, it's called survival of the fittest. You need guys who can just step up when a star player goes down at any moment, and that's what the Seahawks have. The Giants, on the other hand, they have a mid roster. I don't think this is a bad team, and they are 1-3 right now, but I think they can turn their season around a little bit. They are a team that's capable of pulling off an upset or two when Saquon Barkley comes back. But overall, this isn't going to be any more than an 8-win team at best. They're mid. That's the only way I can put it about this roster. You have no elite receivers. I do like Jalen Hyatt. I do want to see more of him, but he's just an elite deep threat. And outside of that, there's not really a lot of ways you can get him involved in the offense if Daniel Jones doesn't have time to throw the deep ball. And New York, the only way this offense is really going to get rolling is if they can get this offensive line playing better. They're playing against some really good teams. The best teams in the NFC all have great defensive lines. And their schedule isn't going to get any easier. And their offensive line isn't looking any better, especially if JMS isn't able to play for the next couple of matchups. So my biggest takeaways from this game is that the Seattle Seahawks, they're making a statement. They're 3-1. And the 49er faithful out there that make it seem like the NFC West is on lock, y'all better watch out for the Seahawks. And y'all get mad when I say it, but I'm going to keep saying it. Like, the Seattle Seahawks are just as good as the San Francisco 49ers. They got a lot of depth. And they got a good amount of top-end talent themselves. You signed Javon Hargrave, they signed Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones is one of the most underrated defensive tackles in the NFL. You want to know why? Because he can get after the quarterback. If you got a defensive tackle that can give you 6.5 sacks or more per season, he's really good. It's really hard to find elite productive defensive tackles that can get pressure on the quarterback consistently. That's why they're in such high demand. Why do you think Jalen Carter got drafted in the top 10, despite the personal issues or the character concerns? The Seattle Seahawks, y'all really need to start looking at this team as a Super Bowl contender. Really look into this roster because they got a lot of talent and they got a lot of depth. It doesn't matter how many injuries they have. They're going to be able to overcome them because they drafted well and they got a lot of good free agency acquisitions. Like, look at their backup offensive line and how they played in this game versus how the backup offensive line of the Giants played. Now, for the New York Giants, you're mid. You're not bad, but you're not good neither. You're a mid team, and you're going up against some of the best teams in the NFL. And, you know, there's a saying that goes, you're not always what your record says you are. And for the New York Giants, I don't think they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. They're 1-3. Which would tell you at least right now they are, but I think if even they were healthy, I think that they probably still would lose by a considerable margin to some of the top-end teams in the NFC. But when they start playing some of the mid teams and they're able to get a break in their schedule later on in the season, I think they're going to start being able to pull off a couple of wins. Like, I really can't wait for them to play the Washington Commanders. I really want to see how they hold up against the Washington Commanders. That's really going to be the game that kind of puts the nail in the coffin for me in terms of if I believe that this team can turn it around and maybe sneak into the postseason as a 7 seed, or if they just aren't really that great. The Steelers and the Atlanta Falcons have been held back this season by poor quarterback play. Desmond Ridder, he's been shit. Kenny Pickett, he just got injured against the Houston Texans. He's been shit too. They have some serious concerns at quarterback. Okay, Kenny Pickett, I was never high on him to begin with. And y'all know this. I wanted Malik Willis. And regardless of what y'all may think about Malik Willis, yeah, he may not be great right now, but at least he has way more potential than Kenny Pickett. You see, with Kenny Pickett, he hasn't been helped out due to the fact that Matt Canada is the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL. And with a guy like Kenny Pickett, who has a very low floor and a very low ceiling, at best, if Kenny Pickett reaches his potential, he's a top 12, top 13 quarterback. That's pretty much it. So for you to be able to win Super Bowls or be able to compete with him, you got to have a good offensive coordinator and you got to have a good supporting cast around him. You got the receivers down packed, you got some solid backs, but your offensive line is garbage. Now, Kenny Pickett, he doesn't have a great arm and he's not really a great athlete. And for some reason, he only plays his best football when the game is on the line. And my thing with Kenny Pickett is that I kind of label him to be a scrappy quarterback. He's one of those quarterbacks that I don't really think he's ever going to have a game that you're going to look at in the stat sheet and you're going to say, oh yeah, like he played an incredible game. I think he's one of those quarterbacks that kind of just plays at his best when the game is on the line. But the problem with that is that he's not really putting the Steelers in a situation to be in close games for him to elevate in the fourth quarter like he did during his rookie season, because the Steelers are getting blown the fuck out. I mean, they lost to the Houston Texans and he played garbage. I'm going to just keep it 100. I don't want to hear anything about, oh, he needs more time and Matt Canada this, Matt Canada that. When you're drafted in the first round, you're expected to be able to overcome dysfunction. Justin Herbert has went through several offensive coordinators, and he's about to go through his third head coaching change this offseason after the season concludes. And yet, he's still one of the top-end quarterbacks in the league. When you're drafted in the first round, you got to be able to somewhat be able to overcome some dysfunction, okay? A good offensive coordinator makes the average quarterback look great. But a great quarterback can make an average play caller look good. Hence why guys like Adam Gase have gone coaching jobs, because he was the offensive coordinator for the Broncos during the Peyton Manning era for a couple of years. So when you got a great quarterback, he can make a bad or average offensive coordinator look great. Matt Nagy with the Chiefs, he got a job thanks to Patrick Mahomes. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and this Kenny Pickett situation, Matt Canada isn't helping Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett just isn't that good. Okay, and I like Kenny Pickett. I just don't like him as the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really wanted somebody better. And it's no surprise that many analysts out there consider the 2021 quarterback class to be, or the 2022 quarterback class to be, really weak. And it's no surprise that Desmond Ridder is struggling too. Let's get on him. I mean, we knew what Desmond Ridder was going to be. Anytime you get compared to Alex Smith, my expectations are automatically low for you. I don't know why people make it seem like being labeled a game manager and being labeled an Alex Smith kind of quarterback is, a compliment, because it's not. If you're an Alex Smith level quarterback, that means that anytime that team has an opportunity to replace you, they're going to do it. And you saw what happened with Alex Smith his final season in Kansas City. They let him start while Patrick Mahomes was getting groomed on the bench. And after the season concluded, they shipped him off to Washington and they started Patrick Mahomes. And when you got an Alex Smith kind of quarterback like a Desmond Ridder, you're always going to be wandering and your eyes are always going to be the lookout for a potential upgrade. Desmond Ridder hasn't played good, and he hasn't even played anything close to what an Alex Smith will play at. Alex Smith doesn't throw interceptions. I watched that Jacksonville Jaguars game live. Woke myself up at 9:30 a.m., brought the ESPN Plus subscription because I really just wanted to see Desmond Ridder. I really did. And I was really disappointed. This fool threw 2 interceptions on back-to-back drives. Made the same mistake twice. It's easy to get mad at Bryce Young, but Bryce Young is a rookie quarterback, so he has time. Desmond Ridder's in year 2. He was supposed to be better than Marcus Mariota. You know the reason why Marcus Mariota got benched for Desmond Ridder last year? Because Marcus Mariota folded in big moments of games. Anytime the Falcons were in a close game with Marcus Mariota as the starting quarterback and the ball was in his hands, he always choked it away. And the lone time they were able to win despite him choking was when their defense got to stop. I believe it was against the Seattle Seahawks. So in comes Desmond Ridder, And Falcon fans, before the season, what were they telling you? We don't need Desmond Ridder to be great. He don't need to be an MVP candidate. All we need him to do is to not turn the football over and hand the damn football over. And you know, in hindsight, that sounds easy. It sounds easy just to say, yeah, like, it's easy for a quarterback to take care of the football. And it's easy for them to hand the football over. And Atlanta has some really phenomenal running backs. I love me B. John Robinson. I got me a B. John Robinson jersey on the way along with my Bryce Young jersey. But the thing is, what's going to happen when the team start putting 8-9 guys in the box and they start trying to game plan just to stop the run? And you got Desmond Ridder, Mr. Check Down Charlie, who doesn't really like to throw the football downfield. You know, I saw some rumors out there that say that the Dallas Cowboys were intrigued in trying to trade for Kyle Pitts. And apparently, according to these reports, they called the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons laughed. They said, no way. You know, what's the point of keeping Kyle Pitts if he's getting held hostage by Mr. Check Down Ridder? Come on, man. I mean, Desmond Ridder is holding back some really talented players. People keep making it seem like Kyle Pitts is a bust. He's not a bust. Neither is Drake London. Look who's throwing the football. Look who was throwing Kyle Pitts the football last year. You see, Desmond Ridder is just not at that quarterback right now. And is he going to improve? He might. I doubt it. And you know, the better quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, I feel, has been the backup the whole time, and that's Taylor Heinicke. And if the Falcons start Taylor Heinicke, I think that they possibly could win this division. Because Bryce Young isn't as good as what I thought, and the Panthers aren't a good team. The Buccaneers have looked really good with Baker Mayfield up to this point, but we'll see if they're going to be able to keep it together. The New Orleans Saints, they're mid. I don't think they're good. Derek Carr hasn't been anything special. So with Taylor Heinicke at the helm at quarterback, I think the Falcons would be in good hands. At least Taylor Heinicke, he can get your offense moving the football downfield. He may lose you a couple of games because he may have a couple of games where he turns the football over, but at least he's better than Desmond Ridder. He'll make plays. He'll try to push the football downfield. Desmond Ridder, he does take some shots deep, but not enough. The dude just plays super conservative, man. Like, everything is a check down. And at this point, with talks of him maybe getting benched, even though Arthur Smith has came out and gave him support, what's going to happen if he struggles this week? Then what? We get to halftime. Are you just going to keep rolling with Desmond Ridder? Or are you going to throw in Taylor Heinicke? I find it really funny how a guy like Arthur Smith in a really critical year would put his job security on the line for a guy like Desmond Ridder. If my job is on the line and I'm a head coach on the hot seat, if I get fired, I at least want to go out with the elite top-end quarterback. When you got an elite top-end quarterback, it makes things a lot easier. The Falcons would have made things so much easier if they just had a better quarterback. Even with Derek Carr, they probably would be a better team. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers on the other end, though, you're kind of SOL right now because you're kind of stuck with Kenny Pickett and he's out. Excuse me, I choked up because I don't want to say this name, Mitchell Trubisky. Like, I am so tired of seeing Mitchell Trubisky in the Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. Like, if Kenny Pickett would have played last year against the Carolina Panthers and never got hurt, we would have won that game and made it to the postseason. Mitch Trubisky, the problem with him is that he just has tunnel vision. He just has a problem with throwing the football to the other team. He's not good. And I was going back and forth with one of my homies who was saying that he can't be no worse than Kenny Pickett. Yes, he can. Kenny Pickett may be bad, but Mitch Trubisky is worse. And so is Mason Rudolph, if he's still even on the roster. Like, the Steelers have never been a team that has gotten fantastic quarterback play over the last couple of years. Like, Big Ben in 2019 and until he retired, he was not good. That was it. But at least he was better than what we have right now. But even then, he was still one of the worst quarterbacks in the league on the tail end of his career, his last 2 seasons. And then you look at Kenny Pickett. I mean, where's the upside with Kenny Pickett? You know, like Kenny Pickett, I like the fact that he's a scrappy player, but I don't really see him as a guy who really, I think, is going to be able to lead you to a championship consistently like a Patrick Mahomes or a Justin Herbert. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers. We went from a Hall of Fame quarterback to a quarterback who at best can be decent. What? One thing about Big Ben, like Big Ben was a ball player, man. There was never a single game that Big Ben played in that the Steelers didn't have a chance at winning when he was in his prime, especially from 2012 to 2018. He was playing some of the best football of his career. We go from Big Ben to Kenny Pickett. I mean, this is tough. Real tough. And I want to like Kenny Pickett, and I do like him. Off the field, I do. I listened to the episode that he did with Big Ben on his podcast, and I hope that Big Ben is, you know, trying to school him up, trying to give him some pointers, because he needs them. I mean, Kenny Pickett, I just I wasn't really expecting much. And it's kind of crazy that, you know, when people ask me how I feel about Kenny Pickett, it's like, you know, like, he's our quarterback. That's it. So, of course, I got to support him and I got to root for him. But if I had the opportunity to select another quarterback in the upcoming draft, a Shedeur Sanders, a Caleb Williams, or a Drake, man, I'll take either one of those quarterbacks in a heartbeat. Like Kenny Pickett, like he's a scrappy quarterback, but I don't really know if scrappy wins you a lot of games. And when you look at the future of the AFC North or the future of the AFC, just the AFC as a whole, a lot of great quarterbacks are in this conference. And if Kenny Pickett isn't even a top 15 quarterback, how are the Steelers ever going to be able to win another Super Bowl? We've been stuck at 6 for the longest. And Mike Tomlin, you know, for somebody who's been around so long, do you think he would kind of be privy to the rest of the NFL and what's going on? The rest of the conference has top-end quarterbacks. Nobody's going to be able to make it out with a Kenny Pickett. I'm sorry. The Falcons could make it out maybe with the above-average quarterback because the NFC doesn't have a lot of great quarterbacks. The only elite quarterback they got in the NFC right now at this moment is Jalen Hurts. In the AFC, though, it's like the Western Conference. In the NBA, majority of the best teams are in the West. And majority of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are in the AFC. And for the Steelers, Kenny Pickett, I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm counting him out, but I also know that there's a ceiling with Kenny Pickett. And even then, at his best, he's not going to be any better than a top 12 quarterback. And I just don't really know if that's going to be good enough for the Steelers to always be a championship team. I mean, the Steelers got a great defense, and they always do a really good job at drafting and developing players. But in the AFC, when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and even in your own division, you got to face Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson twice. Eventually, those teams are going to be good enough where the Steelers' defense isn't going to be able to completely carry you all the time. The Steelers' defense is this offense. You might as well name TJ Watt the quarterback. Kenny Pickett is just, I don't think he's a guy that I personally, as a player, I would be motivated to go to war for. He doesn't look like a guy who really gets my juices flowing. He just looks like a good guy that's cool to have a drink or a beer with, maybe have a little smoke session with, and that's cool. Like, he's a cool player, but as far as a player that I believe would be able to elevate us in the thickest of moments, I don't know, and Kenny Pickett is that guy. And I do like the fact that he's a feisty, scrappy player because the dude does play some really good football in the fourth quarter, but the problem is that, like, he just plays garbage. And when you play garbage for the first 3 quarters, you're not going to be in position to play well in the fourth quarter because the game is going to be well out of reach. You see, one thing about Big Ben, it didn't matter how bad he played. One thing about it, he'll go out slinging that bug. Like, I remember that Thursday night game against the Minnesota Vikings during his final season. In the fourth quarter, the Steelers were down multiple possessions, and they still lost the game, but Big Ben, oh my goodness. You talk about vintage Big Ben, the beast that we awakening? Big Ben was really pushing the football down the field. Like, anytime the game seemed like it was out of reach, you knew Big Ben was going to take a lot of shots. He was going to be super aggressive, and Kenny Pickett just isn't that. He doesn't have the arm strength that Big Ben has. He can't fit throws in the tight windows. And he's not really a quarterback that's really ultra aggressive. You got George Pickens. If Big Ben had George Pickens, he'll be throwing lob passes downfield to him all day. You know, Kenny Pickett, I like the fact that he's tough and scrappy, but I don't think tough and scrappy is going to be able to get you any Super Bowls or any Super Bowl appearances in the AFC. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson looks like a beast right now. I mean, CJ Stroud. I would take CJ Stroud over Kenny Pickett right now, and he's a rookie. And he's only 3 games in. It's like, look at how the AFC is right now. When you got a young quarterback, you have a promising future. And when you got a young quarterback that already is elite, you got a chance at being able to be a perennial powerhouse for decades. As long as you got a great team and good coaching. And the Steelers, they always have good teams, but they're not going to have a good quarterback. And I know it's year 2 and he's injured, so I want to see how he comes back from his injury. Now, as far as Desmond Ridder, like, I think he's just not good. Okay, and I think eventually he's going to get benched for Taylor Heineke. Arthur Smith is in year 3. He has a lot riding on this season. And the Falcons' defense has played pretty well. So if Desmond Ridder isn't it and he can't take care of the football, you need to put in Taylor Heineke. Arthur Smith, his job security is kind of on the line. And I don't know if he's going to get a 4th year if the Falcons miss the playoffs. If it's due to Desmond Ridder being trash. The Falcons haven't been competitive in their last 2 games. You got blown out by the Jaguars. The Jaguars don't have a great defense. You got blown out by the Lions. Okay? You barely beat the Panthers. And Bryce Young played awful. And you barely managed to beat the Green Bay Packers. And you know what's funny is that I said that in that game, Desmond Ridder almost threw 3 interceptions. And there were Falcons people coming at me saying, oh, almost doesn't count. Like, he didn't throw them, so that's all that matters. It's like, no, it still matters that he almost threw 3 interceptions, because that means that he's making bad decisions. He's making bad reads. And when you make bad decisions and bad reads, you throw picks. Rather, if they get caught or dropped or not, it's still a mistake. And eventually they catch up to you. You know, my algebra class, I used to find ways to get the answers, not doing things the proper way. And eventually when the problems got more complex and I didn't know the proper way to finally be able to solve the problem, I got caught and I ended up not being able to solve the problem. And for Desmond Ridder, you know, it's like with him not really being great at reading defenses and being turnover prone, he's a liability to this offense. This offense is based on running the football and ball control. And when you take a lot of time off the clock, you can't afford to have a lot of mistakes because you're not going to have a lot of opportunities. Desmond Ridder just isn't it. And I already had an evaluation on him coming out that I didn't really see him being anything all that great. I thought at best he could be a serviceable starter at times. You know, Kenny Pickett, it's like I thought he could be a top 15 quarterback at best. But Desmond Ridder, it's like I barely thought he could cut it as a starting quarterback. And with the Falcons, it's like their offensive line hasn't really done him any favors. Their offensive line knows how to run block, but they just don't give a damn about pass blocking. And some of this is based on Desmond Ridder holding the ball too long. Before I get into my next segment, if you haven't already, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Sunday through Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm in the zone right now. Like, we got a lot of things to talk about. Like, you guys don't know how much I've been wanting to talk about my next topic. I've been holding this in all weekend. Wait until I get done taking my sip of water, man, because I don't know what the hell the Detroit Lions got against Jahmyr Gibbs, but they irritated me really bad. Like, I'm getting real sick and tired of the treatment that Jahmyr Gibbs is receiving. Before we get into my tirade on how the Detroit Lions are doing Jahmyr Gibbs, leave a like if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and give us a 5-star review, man. We're not just the podcast that you can find on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Go ahead and check us out. If you enjoying the episode, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. All you got to do, type in the JT Sports Podcast on Apple or Spotify and give us a 5-star review. Or you can go down to the description down below. There'll be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast down below. The Detroit Lions must have Jahmyr Gibbs in solitary confinement because they haven't really been using him that much. And it's funny how they drafted him in the first round of this past year's draft along with Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson has been on the field for 73% of the Atlanta Falcons offensive snaps. Let me repeat that. Bijan Robinson has been on the field for 73% of the Atlanta Falcons snaps on offense. How about Jahmyr Gibbs, though? A whopping 43%, right? So, we already know that the Detroit Lions beat the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football, and David Montgomery went off. But where was Jahmyr Gibbs? He was nowhere to be found. Going into the second quarter, he only had 2 touches, man. 2 touches. And I got mad and I made a TikTok about it. And people were like, man, you should have known that David Montgomery was the RB1. It's like, I knew that David Montgomery was the RB1, but I don't know if you looked into Jahmyr Gibbs' profile, but he's more than just a running back. He can play in the slot and he can play receiver. But you know, the Detroit Lions, they just don't care to use Jahmyr Gibbs as a wide receiver. The Atlanta Falcons have been putting Bijan Robinson all over the place. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, he has the same skill set as Bijan Robinson. But yet, Ben Johnson, a really good offensive coordinator, highly praised, hasn't really been utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs to all his abilities. Okay? He doesn't need to be getting 10, 12 carries a game. I'm not saying that. And David Montgomery obviously is the better running back. But there's no reason why I should see David Montgomery lining out wide when the Detroit Lions are going empty. That just makes no sense. Why are you putting David Montgomery out wide if you know that Jahmyr Gibbs is obviously the better receiving back of the two? I just expected the Detroit Lions to be a little bit more creative with how they're utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs. People are saying, well, he's not great running the football up the middle. Like, bruh, Jahmyr Gibbs isn't really that kind of bruising back. And he is really good running the football up the middle, contrary to what people may say. But he's more of an Alvin Kamara kind of back. You need to get him going. You need to get him going out to the edge. You need to get him running outside zone, stretch plays. Like, you need to get his speed on the edge. You need to get him out in space. He's not a running back that you need to be running 15, 20 times up the damn middle. You need to be putting him in the slot, lining him out at receiver, because he has really good route runner. I think that he's the second best route runner on the team. He trains down in South Florida with Gold Feet Global. And if you guys don't know who Gold Feet Global is, you need to go ahead and look up his Instagram page, because all of the NFL's top receivers all train with him. The majority of them do. And Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson were both training with him. And the Detroit Lions, it's funny how they were showcasing how they were lining him out wide at receiver during OTAs, mini camps, and training camp. But we get to the regular season, and all of a sudden, Jahmyr Gibbs isn't getting no more action at receiver. Like, what? And here's my issue with this. What was the point of drafting Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round if you're not going to utilize him? You don't need a great running back to begin with. You traded down from 6 down to 12 and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. When if you would have stayed at 6, you could have drafted Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter would have solidified your defensive line of being one of the best in the league for the next 3 to 5 years. Imagine Jalen Carter with Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston. Who could have stopped that? Not too many teams. And Jalen Carter has been going off for Philadelphia right now. The Lions' interior defensive line, I think they will greatly be able to benefit from having Jalen Carter. But even if you don't agree with me feeling like Detroit should have taken Jalen Carter, my thing is just like, why are you going to draft a player in the first round who you're not really going to use? If I'm drafting a player in the first round, I'm looking for somebody who can make an impact right away. This isn't quarterback. Quarterback is probably the only position that you can draft in the first round and not expect them to have an impact right away. That's different. But any other position, you should be on the field having an instant impact. So the fact that the Detroit Lions have Jahmyr Gibbs and they don't want to give him a lot of touches really confuses the hell out of me. What's the point of drafting him then? You feel me? You might as well have just let Jahmyr Gibbs go to somebody else. You could have just kept DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's been going crazy for the Philadelphia Eagles. You could have reinvested that first round pick into another position. Like maybe drafted another cornerback. Maybe get another pass rusher. I don't know. But my point is just this. The Detroit Lions are wasting Jahmyr Gibbs' talent. They need to let my boy out of the cage. They got my boy in the gulag or keeping him locked up in the dog pound. They need to let him out the cage. Jahmyr Gibbs is a really talented running back, especially when he gets out in space. And Ben Johnson, as good as a coordinator that he is, I'm really disappointed with the lack of utilization that Jahmyr Gibbs has been getting. Jahmyr Gibbs is way too talented to only be getting 5-4 touches a game. It doesn't matter if he's a rookie running back. This is what really irritates me about some people. People always be quick to say, oh, he's a rookie. You can't expect things too soon. Like, Bijan Robinson is already going off. I'm so tired of this whole notion that just because somebody's a rookie, you can't be expecting too much. If I'm drafting you in the first round and you're a running back and not too many running backs are going in the first round in today's NFL, I better see you making some plays on the field. And my offensive coordinator better be finding ways to implement you in the offense. It's not about winning in this situation. In this situation, it's about finding players that can produce for you and have an impact. The Detroit Lions have a guy who they're barely using, who they invested a first-round pick into. Imagine who else they could have drafted, who could have had a bigger impact than Jahmyr Gibbs. We already knew David Montgomery was the RB1. If that was the case and they were going to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs the way that they have, they might as well have just drafted a running back in round 2 or 3 and just reinvested their first round pick into a bigger position of need. But instead, Brad Holmes goes ahead and he gets another flashy toy. And I thought that it was going to be a good fit. I wasn't one of those people that called the Detroit Lions and Brad Holmes idiots for drafting Jahmyr Gibbs when they already had signed David Montgomery. I was defending the pick. I was saying, man, y'all crazy. They got Ben Johnson. He's one of the most creative coordinators in the NFL. Like him with Jahmyr Gibbs, they're going to find ways to get him the ball because he can play receiver. They're going to have him playing in the slot. Have rarely saw any snaps of Jahmyr Gibbs lining out wide in the slot. Why the hell did I see David Montgomery lining out wide and empty? David Montgomery is a really good running back, but he's no closer to the receiving back that Jahmyr Gibbs is. I really am scratching my head right now because Jahmyr Gibbs is not being utilized. And yes, I do have him on my fantasy team. But this isn't about my fantasy team. Like, I'm just coming at this from a common sense standpoint. You know, I don't get why I'm getting so much pushback on social media for me saying that the Lions should have never drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. It's not about, you know, him being a rookie. It's about him being able to make an impact for you. You could have drafted another player of another position that could have had a way bigger impact than Jahmyr Gibbs. What impact can he have if he's on the sideline? If you knew you weren't going to be utilizing him that much, you should have drafted another position that you could get on the field that could actually have a bigger impact for you. That's all I'm saying. And right now, Jalen Carter will have a way bigger impact on the Detroit Lions right now than Jahmyr Gibbs. He'll be starting for them right now. He'll be wreaking havoc. Him, Aiden Hutchinson, and James Houston, you might as well have drafted him. It's like, I haven't heard Jahmyr Gibbs' name called all that much outside of the game when he got 17 carries when Montgomery was injured. And even then, they still haven't been utilizing him right. They need to let Jahmyr Gibbs out the cage, man. It's like he's getting held back, and he really shouldn't be. He's not a bad running back. He hasn't played bad. He just hasn't been used correctly, in my opinion. Jahmyr Gibbs needs to be let free. And if they aren't going to let him free, then I think that this was a wasted pick. They should have just stayed at 6 and taken Jalen Carter. Or they should have just drafted another position that had way more importance. Running backs aren't getting drafted in the first round for a reason. The Bears are the worst team in the NFL right now. They blew a 3-touchdown lead this past Sunday to the Denver Broncos, and they now are 0-4. And at this point, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you might as well just wave the white flag and find another team to root for. I am giving you a personal pass to be a bandwagon fan for just this lone season of another team because you guys deserve it. How can you guys continue to support this shit show, man? I mean, the Chicago Bears, they need to burn this whole entire building down to the ground. You need to start over with general manager, right? Ryan Poles, he has to go. All of his offseason acquisitions haven't really panned out. Tremaine Edmonds hasn't really been that great. I mean, you drafted Tyreek Stevenson, who many people were raving about, and he's a former Hurricane, and I'm a Hurricanes fan, but he hasn't really looked all that great. And you still don't have a pass rush, and the offensive line is still awful. And I know you're dealing with some injuries, but still, it's like this team isn't better than the team that they were last year. As a matter of fact, they may be worse than what they were last season. It's crazy how the Chicago Bears could potentially have the #1 pick 2 consecutive years in a row. Not only do they need to start over at general manager, but they most importantly need to start over at head coach. Regardless of how you may feel about Justin Fields, we'll get into him a little bit later. Matt Eberflus has to go. You want to know how you know Matt Eberflus isn't it? He's a defensive-minded coach, and the defense sucks water through a garden hose. This defense sucks. Russell Wilson and Sean Payton were cooking this defense in the fourth quarter, man. This defense was getting shredded to death. Not just that, but he was getting out-coached by a team that got blowed the hell out by the Miami Dolphins. This is the same Broncos team that allowed the Dolphins to put 70 on them. And Sean Payton is one of the best offensive minds in the history of this game. But Matt Eberflus, you know, with the way that this defense was playing in the first half, you would have thought that this defense would have turned the corner under Matt Eberflus. But no, instead, they allowed Russell Wilson and company to go ahead and score like 3 consecutive possessions of unanswered points. They scored like 21, 28 unanswered. So when you look at the fact that this defense isn't good and the offense isn't great neither, Justin Fields played his heart out and he still lost. You know, it's like, I know quarterbacks can't be judged by win-loss record, but he's only won 5 games in 20-something games. That's an issue. And it really blows me how people are saying he wasn't the reason why they lost this game. He lost them this game. Literally. Like, there was one play where the Denver Broncos got the ball from him and they took it back, and that ended up really tilting the game in the Broncos' favor. And then on the final possession, he threw an interception. He threw it right to Kareem Jackson. So it's like, what are people talking about? It wasn't Justin Fields' fault. On the final possession of the game, he literally threw it to the Denver Broncos. What? How can you look at that game, watch Justin Fields throw the game-sealing interception to number 22, Kareem Jackson, and not say, oh, like, it's not Justin Fields' fault that we lost? What? Are you crazy? You might need to go get your vision checked. If you could really watch this game, watch the ending, and not say Justin Fields was the reason why the Bears lost this game, because he was. I mean, now he was the reason also why they had a chance to win this game. He played well, but even with him playing well, he still sold the game. Same thing with Zach Wilson. Oh, the irony. Oh, my goodness. The irony. It's so funny how Zach Wilson and Justin Fields play the best games of their NFL careers, and yet they still have back-blowing turnovers at the end of the game that lose their team the game. I know football is a team sport, and the Chicago Bears have an awful team. They have an awful coaching staff. Matt Eberflus, it's 4th and 1, right? The Bears got a chance to go up 3 points. It's 31-28. But instead, Matt Eberflus says, nah, like, we finna run it. We finna go ahead and try to get the 4th and 1 conversion. And of course they don't get it, because when you're an awfully coached team, you can't expect an awfully coached team to be able to execute late in games. So of course they don't pick it up. And with Sean Payton being the better head coach, at that point you knew the Broncos were going to go ahead and win the game. So at this point, they just need to blow it up. They need to start over at quarterback. I like Justin Fields. He's my favorite player in the league, but he just needs a fresh start. Like, I felt bad for Justin Fields at the end of that game with him sitting on the bench with his head down. Like, that really hurt my heart a little bit, because he did play a really good game, and although he did kind of lose it, he's not the whole entire reason why they lost, but I am kind of telling you guys that at the same time, he did kind of throw the game away for them. You can say he never should have been in that position, but at the same time, he was a former first-round pick. He's a franchise quarterback, supposedly. He was somebody who was projected to win the NFL MVP by many people. So when you got a quarterback that you draft in the first round that's supposed to be your franchise QB, with the game on the line, he should win it for you. Especially against Russell Wilson, who did play really good. Justin Fields, I just think he needs a fresh start. I just think that the Chicago Bears have just destroyed this man's confidence. They've destroyed this man's ability to really be able to comprehend the game of football. It's like, we get that Justin Fields isn't great at reading defenses, but the Chicago Bears aren't doing a better job at teaching him. It's like, you heard what he said at the presser last week. He feels robotic out there. It's just too much information for him. They're just overloading him with things because they're trying to make him be something that he's not. It's just the Chicago Bears, they've kind of ruined Justin Fields. I don't really think that Justin Fields should stay in Chicago. And if I'm Justin Fields, I'm asking for a trade. Somebody is going to trade for Justin Fields, and he's going to be a starting quarterback elsewhere. One thing that people seem to overlook about former first-round quarterbacks is that they always get some type of employment, unless they've had, like, crazy off-the-field incidents. Like, there's not too many former first-round picks that still aren't in the league, even though they're bust. Like, they still find a job some way, somehow, and they still get a good amount of opportunities to prove themselves. Look at Baker Mayfield. You know how many teams this fool has played on? So you look at Justin Fields, I'm pretty sure somebody would trade for Justin Fields. Now, of course, you're not giving up a first-round pick for him, but you probably give up a third or a fourth. Somebody definitely would take a chance on Justin Fields. But the Chicago Bears have just ruined this man. It's like this fool plays the best game of his career, and it's still not enough. Now, although he did sell them the game, because at the end of the day, he is a big reason why they lost. He threw the game-losing interception. He threw it right to Kareem Jackson. Oh, we just ignore that. Like, I get why it's easy to root for Justin Fields. And I root for Justin Fields too. But at the same time, we got to be honest about this. He's not a good quarterback right now. It's just hard for people to be honest about players that they really like, or players that get drafted really high. There's still people out there that's trying to say, man, Trey Lance, like, he got it, man. No, he doesn't. I don't need to see Trey Lance in a regular season game to know that he doesn't have it, because he's not even performing in practice. I mean, ever since he got picked up by the Dallas Cowboys, haven't heard a peep about Trey Lance. Haven't heard anything about him going off in practice. None of that. So with Justin Fields, it's like, he'll easily get another opportunity. And I do think that Justin Fields would be way better on a team like the Minnesota Vikings or the LA Rams. You know, like, he does need a little bit of coaching. You send him for a year, let him sit back and learn. After that first initial year, he could bounce back. So the Chicago Bears, you need to get rid of Justin Fields and just start over. Matt Eberflus, you need to get rid of him too. The defense is terrible. And Ryan Poles has to go too. The Bears just need to blow this thing up and start over from the ground up. Kevin Warren is the only person who really needs to stay, because he really literally just got there. So you can't blame this dumpster fire on him. He just got there. But the Bears suck right now. If you're a Bears fan, you need to go ahead and just root for another team. Just be a Kansas City Chiefs fan for this year, because unless you're rooting for the Bears to get the number 1 overall pick so you can get Caleb Williams and hopefully get a new head coach, there's nothing to root for when it comes to this team. You're 0-4. Your season's done. You could turn things around, but are you really going to be able to turn things around with how bad your coaching staff is? Like, Matt Eberflus' defense is terrible. The defense was awful last year and it's awful this year. He just isn't it. That's a big red flag. This team probably only had the game that they had offensively because they were going up against a defense that gave up 70 points. We don't know how this defense is going to look against the Washington Commanders, who have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Like, Justin Fields might be running for his life this Thursday night. I forgot they played this Thursday. Oh my goodness. You fall to 0-5, you definitely have to throw in the towel. Just throw in the damn towel. Throw it in. Just throw it in. And if you're a Bears fan, please stop torturing yourself watching this team. Like, they're going to rip your heart out every single year. And not just do you need to stop supporting the Bears, but, bro, stop supporting the Bulls. Like, it's funny how I support the Bulls too, and they're just as dumb and idiotic as the Chicago Bears. But this is a football channel and a football podcast, but it's like Chicago sports teams, when it comes to football and basketball, like, I guess common sense is non-existent for them for some reason. But the SEC is chaos right now. This conference is fair game for anybody, right? Georgia was in a drag-out, all-out dogfight with the Auburn Tigers, and I get it's a rivalry. The Deep South's oldest rivalry, but there is a time when you used to see Georgia play teams that you knew they were way better than, and they would squander them, they would squash them, and they would blow them out. But this year, though, Georgia just doesn't have that same level of intensity that they've had in years prior. And you look at the rest of the SEC East, Kentucky is undefeated. They play them this week. I don't think Kentucky really has, Kentucky may have a really good chance, because one thing about Georgia that they've always had is they've always had a really good defensive line. For the last 2 years, they've had two of college football's greatest defensive lines ever. I mean, they have like 5-6 guys that played on their defensive lines that are in the NFL. Hell, the Philadelphia Eagles have like, 3 of them. So for Georgia this year, you look at that run defense, Auburn, them boys had their way against Georgia's defense, at least when it came to what they do on the ground, right? And when you look at Kentucky, you know, Ray Davis just went for 280 and 3 tutties on the ground against Florida's run defense. And Florida does have a pretty solid defensive line. I just think that Kentucky's offensive line just happens to be really good again. You know, normally they always tend to have one of college football's best offensive lines. This offensive line did a really good job at opening up running lanes against a pretty solid defensive line. Now against Georgia, you know, maybe Ray Davis won't go for a buck 280 against them, but I do think that he'll have some success on the ground with how good Kentucky's offensive line is. But to beat Georgia, you got to be able to throw the football. And Devin Leary, I don't know what the hell happened to this brother, but he just forgot how to be a good quarterback. He has to be the biggest disappointment out of any quarterback out of the transfer portal. A real big disappointment, because Kentucky has a really good offense. If they had a great quarterback, I think they possibly will win the SEC East this year. I damn near would have picked them before the season if I knew Georgia was going to look like the way that they do right now. But Devin Leary just isn't in that quarterback right now. I thought he was going to be an upgrade over Will Levis. But then you got Missouri, right? Now, I didn't see this shit coming. I never thought that Missouri would be undefeated at this point. And Elijah Drinkowitz, you know, I was sleeping on him. I was calling Missouri mid. Missouri hasn't really been all that great since they last made it to the SEC championship game when they had Michael Sam and Shane Ray. But Missouri this year, though, they got a big win over Kansas State, and Brady Cook is playing some outstanding football, and they got a really good offense. They got some really good receivers. Their defense probably isn't that great, but, you know, last time they played Georgia, they got after it. So you look at Missouri, they play LSU this week, but they're playing them at home. And I think with the way that Missouri's schedule is, the fact that some of their toughest games are going to be at home, I think they have a very good chance at maybe being able to finish in second place, maybe win this division with how Georgia has played. The way Georgia has played, there's not really a team that you can look at and say, oh, yeah, like, they don't got a good chance to beat Georgia. Like, we thought that Auburn was going to get slaughtered by Georgia this past Saturday. And instead, they were hanging with Georgia. They damn near won the game at one point. Then, you go to the SEC West. Oh, my goodness. This is where so much madness is occurring, right? Now, Alabama, right now, I still think that they're going to win it. All right, but I am kind of getting a little bit worried. Their defense is playing lights out, but this offense, unless Jalen Milroe is able to hit a big play downfield every once in a while, or he pops off a big run, this offense really doesn't have much juice. You feel me? Now, Jalen Milroe is the best option that they have at quarterback, but at times he can be really hot and cold. It's like he'll have some good throws 1 minute, and then the next drive, he'll make some really back-breaking decisions that'll make you go, bro, what the hell were you thinking? So Alabama right now, I just think they're going to be able to win the SEC West just based on the fact that I don't really know too many teams that are going to be able to really slow down their rushing attack when they play them, because LSU's defense is historically bad, especially their secondary. They're supposed to be known as DBU, ain't they? And yet their secondary is awful. And when you look at not just LSU, but Ole Miss has a really good offense, but again, where's the defense? And when Ole Miss played Alabama, they got rolled. It wasn't really close. Now, for LSU, I wonder if they can keep it more competitive. But at the same time, you got to play Alabama on the road this year. You played Alabama at home last year. And with the way your defense is, I don't really know if you're going to be able to slow down Alabama's offense, even though they do got Jalen Milroe, because he's just such a great athlete. And the fact that he does have a really good arm, the fact is that with Jalen Milroe, he's a really unpredictable player. So he could pop off a couple of big plays downfield, throwing the ball through the air or with his legs. So I look at Texas A&M. I really like Texas A&M. I was really high on them coming into this season, and I damn near picked them to win the SEC West, honestly. I believe that Bobby Petrino was going to work out, and this offense is humming. Even with Connor Wigman being out for the remainder of this season, like Max Johnson is a pretty good option to be replacing Connor Wigman. And he looked really good last week in their win against Arkansas. And I'm kind of leaning towards changing my prediction from Alabama to Texas A&M, because I kind of already wanted to take Texas A&M, to win the SEC West anyway. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I just got a little bit scared of the backlash I was going to get. Oh, you picking Texas A&M? You crazy. You don't know nothing about football. And then again, like, I kind of knew that Texas A&M might have been in a little trouble against Miami. I just didn't know Miami was going to be as good as what they've been so far up to this point, with me being a Hurricane and this team always ripping my heart out every single season. I just didn't have any expectations for the Hurricanes. But Texas A&M does have a really good defensive line. Their secondary hasn't been what I thought it would be, but their offense is really good. And they play Alabama this week. Now, Alabama may be in some trouble. And if Texas A&M wins this game, I'm picking them to win the SEC West. You can call me a bandwagon all you want to, but I think there's a good chance Texas A&M can pull off this win. Texas A&M, one thing that they have that Alabama doesn't is a consistent offense. And yes, Alabama does have a really tough defense, but so does Texas A&M. And Texas A&M, I think they're going to be able to slow down the run game of Alabama. So Texas A&M, they also could win the SEC West. They could win the whole conference. They are one of the most talented teams in college football. They're like top 5 in 24/7 sports team talent composite rankings. The question with Texas A&M has never been about talent. It's more so just been the coaching, and they got that. They got the offense figured out. Ole Miss, I don't know how I feel about them. Now, they are coming off a really big win against LSU, but man, I got something on my lip, man. Oh, it's gone now. But yeah, they are coming off a really big win against LSU. But my thing with Ole Miss is just that they just don't play any defense at all. And I don't know how much I can really trust a team that just has a defense as bad as Ole Miss. I mean, they got Pete Golden as their defensive coordinator. There's a reason why Nick Saban allowed him to leave. If you're a good coordinator, Nick Saban just don't let you walk out the door unless you just taking a head coaching opportunity. And his defense has been as bad as what I expected it to be. Same thing with LSU. Like, I know LSU is still in it, but they don't really have a defense. It's like, in the SEC, you're kind of damned because either one team has a great offense but absolutely zero defense, or either you have a team that has a great defense but just, a lackluster offense. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm kind of leaning Texas A&M now that I think about it, because out of all the teams in the SEC, who kind of has the most balance outside of Georgia? I kind of got to go Texas A&M. Their defense is solid, and their offense is dependable. Alabama is like, I don't know how dependable their offense is when they're going against some of the best teams in the country. And we're going to see how dependable their offense looks against Texas A&M, especially with them having to go on the road. So, Texas A&M, if they beat Alabama, I like them to win the SEC. It may be a hot take, but I was kind of already high on Texas A&M to begin with. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Alabama this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the SEC. Like, they have a good enough roster that's good enough to compete with any team in college football based on how well they recruited the last couple of years and what the recruiting metrics have indicated. And also what the 247 Sports Team Talent Composite ranking says. They got the 4th most talented team in America, according to them. So for Texas A&M, all they really got to do is beat Alabama, and I think their path to the SEC championship game at least is pretty clear. Red River Showdown. I'm super excited for this game. This is going to be the last time that we see this rivalry game in the Big 12 Conference. They're going to be moving on to the SEC in 2024. But this season, though, there's a lot that Oklahoma has to play for in this game. And Texas is playing for a lot too, but if Brent Venables goes 0-2 in this rivalry, I don't think that's going to sit well with Oklahoma fans. And Oklahoma fans aren't going to want to hear the excuse, oh, Texas just is one of the best teams in college football. They don't want to hear that. Texas is a favorite to win the Big 12 this year, but guess who's right behind them? Oklahoma. And the talent gap between Texas and Oklahoma isn't really that big. And there's not really a reason why Oklahoma shouldn't have a chance at winning this game, because this defense should be really good. Brent Venables is a defensive-minded coach, right? And Texas has one of the most high-powered offense in all of college football this year. They're loaded at wide receiver. Quinn Ewers is playing at a Heisman level. They got really good running backs, a really good offensive line. But the Brent Venables is the defensive guru that we all make him out to be. Texas offense should struggle in this ball game. And Oklahoma's offense, they've been inconsistent. They have some games when they're on, like against Iowa State and Arkansas State, but they struggled against SMU. And they struggled against Cincinnati. And there's been times when Sooner Nation has called out their offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby. Now, Texas defense is really good this year on all levels. Good secondary, really good front seven. And Dylan Gabriel, he kind of can be a little hot and cold himself. So for Oklahoma, this defense is really going to have a big impact on if they're going to have a shot at winning this game. If this defense can show up, they got a great chance at being able to pull off a massive upset, because I do believe that this is a massive upset. Texas is a really good team this year. I think Texas is good enough to win it all, but the talent gap between the two makes it that you really can't count out Oklahoma. Plus the fact that it's a rivalry game. And if this game ends up being competitive like it should be, that should be a testament to how improved this team is in Oklahoma compared to what they were in year one under Brent Venables. I think even if Oklahoma loses, depending on how their season plays out and how they do against some of the tougher teams on their schedule, I don't think nobody's really going to have the pitchforks out for Oklahoma if they have a 9-win or a 10-win season, even though they lost this game. Even though nobody wants to lose their rivalry game, but, if Texas wins it all, it's just like, damn, okay, you feel me? But if Oklahoma gets squashed in this game and they get dog walked like how they did last year, then you're going to have some major question marks and major red flags to be had with Brent Venables. Because last year, you got a dog walk because you had Eric Gray pretty much starting for you at quarterback. You were running a Wildcat offense. As soon as I saw Eric Gray out there running that Wildcat offense, I knew that Texas was about to run away with that game. So in this game, you're going to have a healthy quarterback. You don't really have too many injuries to be worried about. You should be able to come in and have a competitive football game with Texas. And the thing with Texas is that they don't really start off all that great in all their games. Now, against Kansas, they came, they saw, they conquered. But, the large reason why some people, including myself, thought that maybe Texas could struggle against Kansas was because of Jalen Daniels. But guess what? Texas didn't have to worry about Jalen Daniels because he got injured right before kickoff. And Jason Bean, he's not crappy, but he's no Jalen Daniels. So, of course, Kansas was going to get smashed by Texas without Jalen Daniels. Now, Texas, sometimes they can get out to a slow start, but they got the ability to turn it up at any time, right? And Texas is a really great team. You see, Oklahoma, we don't know if they're a great team. Right now, they look like a very good team, but with Texas, they've already proven themselves. They got a win against Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa, and I don't want to hear anybody trying to discredit that win. Regardless of how Alabama season plays out, winning on the road in Tuscaloosa is no easy feat. You got to be a really good team to do that. And with Texas being a great team, great teams have the ability to just find ways to win games, even if they don't play their best football. They have something that I call the trapdoor ability. For example, Ohio State against Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a chance to put the nail in the coffin against Ohio State, and they weren't able to do it. They punted the football back, and they gave the ball to Ohio State, and Ohio State drove down and won the football game. If you're Oklahoma, you got to win this game. And you may be asking, what do you mean by win this game? Of course, they got to win this game. No, when I mean win this game, it's like you can't leave no leftovers on the table. You got to clean your plate. You can't have any back-breaking penalties. You can't be turning the football over. If you get an opportunity to go up 2 possessions against Texas and put the game on ice with less than 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you got to do it. You got to finish. Against great teams, inferior opponents have a hard time finding ways to finish them off. Great teams just know how to win. And Texas, if this game ends up being close and Oklahoma can't finish them off, then Texas is going to win it because they're just a great team and they're a very well-coached team. And I'm not saying Texas is more well-coached than Oklahoma, but I don't think that Oklahoma has near the amount of talent that Texas has, at least offensively. I mean, offensively, come on, man. They got A.D. Mitchell, Isaiah Nayer, Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy. You don't really got a lot of receivers that's as good as what Texas has. Is a lot of those receivers that Texas has transferred to Oklahoma, they'll be starting right now. But the thing with Oklahoma that gives them a shot is that they got a really good defense. So having an elite defense should be able to neutralize them having a great offense if you're Oklahoma, which should give your offense a shot. I think that Dylan Gabriel is a good enough quarterback that as long as you give him a couple opportunities, he can be able to make some plays for you. Now, he is inconsistent at times, but I do think for the most part, he's a pretty good enough quarterback, and he should be good enough to get the job done as long as Texas, their offense struggles against this defense, okay? Now, for Oklahoma, if you win this game, this is big, okay? And I don't really think too many people expect for Oklahoma to win this game. But if they win this game, then does that mean that Oklahoma could be a college football playoff contender? I mean, I don't think too many people are looking at Oklahoma as a potential playoff team. But if they win this game, it will make an already crazy season even more chaotic, especially when this is supposed to be the year that Texas is finally back, per se. And it certainly looks like that. Imagine if Oklahoma just plays spoiler. That would just be gut-wrenching to Steve Sarkisian and then the Longhorns faithful out there. Because it's like, damn, it's like, you feel like this is really the year, and your season wouldn't be SOL. It wouldn't be over. You'll still be able to win this conference and make it to the playoffs and win it all, even with one loss, just with how chaotic this season is. But a loss to Oklahoma, that kind of would be a little bit of a disappointment. Like, Texas is supposed to be one of the best teams in college football, and they should expect to win this game. Like, I'm taking them to win this game. I do like them to win, but I do think that this could be a little bit of a dogfight. And I'll be surprised if Oklahoma doesn't keep this thing close. I really like Brent Venables. And Brent Venables really needs to come out and really show why he was a good hire for Oklahoma. Because many people think that Oklahoma, they don't really got a bright future with them moving to the SEC next year under Brent Venables. There are people who think they're going to be the next Nebraska. They're going to become irrelevant. So even if they don't win this game, like, they need to compete. They need to show that they belong on the field with Texas. Like, Texas is a team that potentially could win it all. And of course, Oklahoma fans are going to expect to win this game, and they're going to be pissed off if they lose. But if you're an Oklahoma fan and you lose this game by one possession, I think you should hang your hat off to that, because I think that Texas is good enough to win it all, and they very well could. But at the end of the day, I understand that this is a rivalry game, so you don't want to hear that nonsense. If you lose, you're going to be pissed off, and there's no excuses about it. Because Oklahoma, their defense should be really good, but offensively, if this game ends out becoming a shootout, it's going to favor Texas. I don't think Oklahoma is a team that's equipped to win a shootout with Texas, and Texas has a better defense. In that situation, Texas, we're not looking at them as a defensive juggernaut. We're looking at Oklahoma as that, because they got Brent Venables. So if his defense gets torched, then I think they already lost. So for Oklahoma, I really want to know if they're going to be able to keep this game close. I believe they will. But if Texas blows them out, I'll be really shocked. Like, if Texas wins by like 2 possessions, I'll be a little surprised. On a scale of 1 through 5, if Texas blows out Oklahoma in this game, I'll be shocked on a scale of 5 out of 5. Because I think that Brent Venables does have a pretty solid team this year. Now, if Texas beats Oklahoma by 14 points, then I'll be shocked out of a scale of 3 out of 5. Now, if Oklahoma wins this game, I'll probably be surprised 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5. I'll go 3.5 out of 5. The reason why I go with the 3.5 is because this is a rivalry game. And even though it seems like Texas feels as if they are a little bit of a more talented team than Oklahoma, the fact that this is a rivalry game and it's going to be intense and emotions are going to be running high, the game should just naturally be close based on that. I know you guys saw the Auburn-Georgia game. Most people thought that was going to be a bloodshedding. And instead, Auburn was hanging around with Georgia. So the fact that Oklahoma, they appear to be a better team this year than what they were last year, I definitely think they're capable of pulling off the upset. But like I said, I'm rolling with the Longhorns to get the win. I really just think that this is their year. And I don't know if they're going to go through their schedule completely unscathed, but I do think that they're going to be up for this game. Oklahoma's going to be up for this game. Both teams are going to be playing their final rivalry matchup in this conference in the Red River Showdown. But I really like the fact that, Texas has Quinn Ewers playing at a really consistent level. He was really inconsistent last year. And the fact that he's been consistent and you can depend on him, he hasn't had a lot of bad turnovers. I really have a lot of confidence that Texas can win this game. But this is going to be the final year of the Red River Showdown in the Big 12 Conference. It's going to be crazy seeing this rivalry played in the SEC. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Remember that we go live Sundays and Monday nights after the Sunday and Monday night games. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we're going to be going live at 9 p.m., probably 9:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight because it is 1 a.m. now. So our live schedule is Sundays and Mondays after the Monday and Sunday night games, and then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. But if you haven't already, leave a like on this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Check out the JT Sports Podcast. We're available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. Wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Glock, a couple of years they'll win, then they'll lose. They usually have good cornerbacks. My guy Caleb Gordon says Ryan Leaf. Shout out to Red Storm. Love your content, bro. Keep doing your thing. I'm always supporting you on all platforms. Appreciate that. JT, I'm no fan of Arthur Smith's play calling, neither too predictable. I really feel like Desmond Ridder makes the play calling look bad. Like, every coach is going to have some bad play calling, but when you got a great quarterback, he can make a bad play call look like a great play call. You feel me? But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys later on.